Welcome to this week's episode of the Real Wealth Podcast. This is an episode that I've been incredibly excited about for a long time. 2 years in the making, and we are finally in the position to talk about one of our biggest business deals to date. I'm joined by none other than Mr. Conar Tracey. How you doing?
I'm well, very happy to be here for this one.
And unfortunately, Mr. Laurie Duncan's not available, but he has missed. This is a monumental milestone for us in our business, so it's a shame Laurie's not here, but we are going to get into the biggest business deal we've done to date, the biggest portfolio acquisition. We're going to talk about some of the history. As I said, this has taken us 2 years to get over the line. There's been so many issues with this deal all the way through the process. It's fell through multiple times, but now we are in a position to announce that we finally concluded on 100 properties in Aberdeen, some of the most iconic stock in Aberdeen City. It's just incredible, right?
Absolutely. It's something that when the opportunity came, we genuinely didn't know if we were even capable of getting it over the line or even taking it on. And he's not here, but without Laurie, he was the one that pushed us to say we have to find a way, and we did. Truly a life-changing moment for me personally, but for us as a business, it'll go down as a massive milestone in our history.
So let's just put this into scale. The assets, 100 units, the majority of it is residential. There's 3 or 4 commercial units in the portfolio, but the majority of it's commercial. Around about 40 odd of the properties are in the Citadel in Aberdeen, which is, if anybody doesn't know Aberdeen, one of the most iconic buildings in the city centre, right at the top of Union Street. It sits, you can see the turrets on the top.
It's directly behind the Castlegate monument, which is, most people it's an iconic statue. It sits just at the top of Union Square, and other people might know it's a Salvation Army building, because that's where it stems back, its history. It's actually a phenomenal story in terms of what it was, but it had a big hall carved out in the middle. It was like I can't remember what it was for, but I've seen all the old pictures. It's phenomenal. And there's articles you can see as to when it was actually converted to flats, and it was something like the building was bought for 23 grand.
Wow.
It's fucking crazy.
Insane.
Crazy.
So
Gordon and I were looking at it yesterday.
So we bought this portfolio from the owner that essentially developed a lot of this stock. He, a huge amount of stock the guy owned in Aberdeen, big commercial residential projects throughout the years. The guy has amassed a huge amount of stock, huge amount of experience. It's been incredible listening to the previous owner and his story and how
the craziest thing is when we say that he developed them, it's not the way that we say we develop, where we buy and we instruct and we do it. He physically was on the tools, developing and carving these buildings out. And
it's very clear he's been very hands-on and he has managed this portfolio masterfully, because you can see the quality of the stock, and this marks a big transition in our investment strategy as well, because this is much higher end stock than we previously would have bought, right? When I go back to the first big portfolio deal that was 80 odd units in Lanarkshire, it was low end stock, high yielding, so there was really solid cash flow, but cheaper assets, right?
Because what was the total value of that portfolio?
3.6.
So there you go. So 82 properties at 3.6 million. Versus 100 at 12 million. It's an extra 18 properties or something, but a huge leap in terms of the value, and that obviously goes with the quality of the stock that we bought. And the Lanarkshire portfolio, we executed it, went very well in terms of what we've done, and we've seen the increase in the values, and it was high yielding, but there comes a point when it makes sense to diversify that portfolio and fill it with stuff that, if you want to drop it into the market and sell it, you can, and you'll get top price for it, and that's what gave us that flexibility and why we were so attracted to this.
So just to summarise those kind of high level numbers on this portfolio, it was valued in 2022 at 12 million, just over 12 million pounds. We bought it for just over £7 million, so huge discount, but that discount does not come without a huge amount of work in the middle.
Yeah.
And the rents are somewhere in the region of about £60,000 a month. Obviously, we're going through the rent increase exercise following changing legislation in April. We're also looking at several of the apartments for serviced accommodation. So there's massive opportunity throughout the portfolio to increase that cash flow.
Always, even if it's a single unit or a portfolio, we're always looking to analyse to say, yes, we understand what the asset value is, we understand we want to be buying at a discount and how we're going to finance it and kind of recycle that cash. But of course, we need to look at the performance of the portfolio and how we can maximise the returns from it. Yeah. And it was clear with everything that's going on in Aberdeen and some of the big announcements up there that there is a demand for serviced accommodation. And with these higher value assets, to borrow against them at current rates, the buy-to-let numbers, they're decent. You still make positive cash flow, but you need to be finding a way to generate more cash, and SA makes perfect sense for us on this one.
It does, and I'm really excited to see the progression of this portfolio. We're starting from a really good position. Like I say, the previous owner really looked after this stock, so we've got quality stock that has been well maintained over a long period of time. We walked around these properties with the previous owner, and he told us how he does regular roof maintenance, gutter clearance, stuff that a lot of property investors miss out on.
He knew everything about every property almost. You could tell that this was his passion, and to be honest, at times that proved to be one of the challenging factors because he was so emotionally attached to it. Through the negotiations, that was definitely one of the hardest stumbling blocks to get around, and one of the reasons why it took so long in the end, was trying to agree on price. But the other thing is that the quality of the stock they maintained it was 100% occupied. And it kind of always has been. I think on average 98% occupancy across the entire portfolio, and for 100 properties, that's really fucking good going.
Yeah, and we have to give a bit of shout out to Sonia Letts & Co, because she has done a really good job of managing this portfolio, and she's obviously managing on our behalf now.
And that's it. We decided that it made complete sense to keep her in place because, again, just like she's inherited from the owner, she knows every property, she knows every tenant, she cares, she knows exactly what we should get, how to maximise the return on that portfolio. And with it going to SA, we've managed to create a structure to keep her at the core of that as well, because it just makes sense for us to do so.
So let's go back to the start of the journey. As we say, it's taken 2 years to get this deal over the line, and I think the first place to start, probably in our journey towards not just this portfolio but Aberdeen in general, right? Because Aberdeen's been without a doubt a massive focus for us for a few years now. We bought our first 12 units in Aberdeen probably coming on 3 years now.
It's over 3 years because it was actually the portfolio I brought along when I first started together. That was going through that transition, so that was 12 flats in Urquhart Road.
8 of which HMOs,
correct.
4 standard lets. I think that portfolio was valued at 1.15 mil. We bought it 750.
Yep, that's right.
And actually that deal is the first example we had where we started the refinance of that deal before we even bought the properties, and within 2 months of ownership we'd fully refinanced and extracted our cash from that deal.
That deal is the one that is the perfect example of the execution of what we call phase 2, because we managed to acquire in the December and we were fully refinanced at the market value and cash out by the February. 8 weeks on 12 units in and out. I think we left 50 grand in on a portfolio of 12. We used about, I think it was about 200 grand worth of cash to be able to acquire it, and we got 150k back in 8 weeks later.
It was incredible. It was incredible, and that stock has performed very well for the last few years. But again, it goes back to the fundamental question: why Aberdeen? Why did we start focusing on acquisition? Because even before this 100 units, we probably bought something in the region of about 30 odd units in Aberdeen.
That's what I was going to say. After the Urquhart Roads, I think we actually had one. We had one at Hilton Drive. That we held in the portfolio, which was one I had sourced for us before we worked together, and again I think we bought it for 60 grand and revalued at 90. It was a 2-bed cottage flat over in the Hilton area in Aberdeen, and that's the thing, like a lot of the stock in this portfolio is very city centre based. There's one, there's a block of 10
And Peter Conar.
In Peter Conar, which again, really nice area, but it was that whole development is just the 10 flats. But other than that, most of it's centrally based. But the entirety of Aberdeen has been attractive to us, whether it's over in Torrey or Hilton or anything like that. It wasn't as if we were area specific to it, because overall, compared to when I was working in auctions, you know, and we were running for Auction House, I was running the Aberdeen auctions every 12 weeks up there. In 2015, literally, it was crazy. Think that, you know, anything we touched went for over home report.
Yeah,
it was mad. You literally name your price. We were taking anything we could on, clutching at straws, trying to get stock, to be honest, because nobody wanted to sell at auction when things were flying on the open market. And then literally that same year, oil market tanked and the market started to shift. And then all the agents started to panic a little bit because things weren't happening, and it's still very much the, you know, Aberdeen Solicitors Club up there, so they stick to their tried and tested methods, and it's quite difficult to kind of do anything. And I think that might have been one of the biggest reasons why the owner of this portfolio actually came directly to us, because they probably realised that the traditional way of selling this, there probably isn't anybody who's going to be able to take this on, and to drip feed it into the market could take years.
It could, especially with the market conditions in Aberdeen, and that really goes back to why we chose Aberdeen and focus so heavily on it. A couple of years ago, there was this. I remember seeing this map, and we've probably put this up in our training so many times, because it's such a aha moment when you see this map of Scotland with all of the average property prices. And I think it was 2021 we first seen this map. All the average property prices in Scotland of all the major towns and cities. Within that 5-year period, prior to that, all the major towns and cities in Scotland went up between 30 to 40%.
Yeah.
30 to 40% increase within 5 years. Massive movement for all the major towns and cities, except Aberdeen, that had went down 12% in 5 years.
Crazy.
So whilst everything's gone up 40%, Aberdeen's went down 12. That's a 50% swing versus where it was in 2015 at the height of the market.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. You know, the average property price in Falkirk was like 170. The average property price in Aberdeen, 148, the second lowest of all major towns and cities. And anybody that's been to Aberdeen understands that it has a huge amount of infrastructure. It has a huge wealth of engineering up there. It still has a lot of activity. It's got teaching hospitals. The fundamentals of Aberdeen are very strong. 100%.
That's why when you say like it doesn't make sense, it genuinely doesn't make sense. Because there's the oil market tanked and things changed there, and that's the hub. You know, the Granite City was the hub for the oil market, but it has everything else. All the other major things that anybody who's looking for investment areas would look for. Universities, you mentioned the big teaching hospital. You know, we're now focused on renewables rather than the oil stuff, but like, it's a big city in Scotland. You know, it's mental that people were scared of it because they believed it was purely driven by one other commodity.
Yeah, and let's not move away from the fact too much that in 2015 there generally was a collapse in that market, and it was driven by, you know, a complete fall in demand. You know, rental fell off the cliff as well. You know, you weren't able to get properties rented. There was so many properties vacant.
And very similar to like the boom of London, where the London bubble broke into all these like suburbs and further areas, all the way up to where even fucking Milton Keynes was getting hit by the London bubble. Aberdeen had that too, where the likes of Peterhead, Fraserburgh and everything up that east coast used to get benefit. You know, I remember my cousin, he was oil and gas, he was a pipe bagger. He worked up in Peterhead, he had a flat long term, he was making really good money just working up there, almost like offshore money. And all of a sudden, just overnight, it was gone. You know, 40 guys just let go, and now properties are sitting on the market for ages because nobody was driving it. There was nothing to drag people up there. And the locals got a little bit bitter about it. You know, anytime we were speaking to people about they needed to sell their property, but they just couldn't believe that nobody was paying the price that once upon a time they had to pay to buy that. But where everything else across Scotland in probably like 2010 there wasn't a crash, there was difficulty, it was definitely slow because that's when I came into the market, and I've only ever been in the kind of below market value space, so it was quite common for things to actually sell in the open market at like a 20% discount from Home Report back then. It would go relatively quickly at that price, but if it wasn't at that level, it would probably sit for quite some time, whereas Aberdeen wasn't, it was booming. So it was protected from where everything else was struggling a little bit. And then 2015, you know, it flips and the rest of the market starts to improve, and Aberdeen plummeted.
Aberdeen always has been this kind of insular market that doesn't necessarily move with the general market in Scotland. We could see that from that graph that we talked about. But the fundamentals going forward for Aberdeen are very strong, because as we've seen from the quarterly data that we see, Aberdeen has got stronger quarter on quarter. And the rental market has entirely recovered from 2015. Rents in the last year went up 14% in Aberdeen.
Crazy.
Yeah, and whereas the previous 4 or 5 years, maybe only 2% in totality. So we've seen in the last year a full recovery of the rental market. Things are renting on average less than 30 days. One beds are averaging between like 550 to 650 a month now in the right areas. 2 beds, you can be anywhere from, you know, 750 up to 8, sometimes £900 depending on where you're situated. Some of the stuff that Bedford Road, you know, some people might look at Bedford Road as being a little bit rough. You get 2 bed flats that we picked up for less than 70 grand that rent for £800 a month. You know, great yield on that sort of stuff. And I think, you know, the one thing that clearly hasn't recovered is the property price, you know, prices. The market, it's still, properties aren't moving that much on the market. It is improving slightly, and I think we did see like a 1 or 2% increase in property prices in Aberdeen in the data, although a lot of the surveyors aren't recognising that.
The surveyors are the biggest challenge in Aberdeen, in my view, because everyone, from an experience point of view, I mean, we looked at the data, and I think it was yourself that said, like, when something doesn't make sense, it suggests opportunity, and that's why we really started to look at it, because it was like, there must be something in this does not fucking make sense. When we piece it together, there must be a gap here. If something's so low, it can only ever rebound and come one way. Obviously, you know, when you look at stock prices and things, a lot of people try and predict the market, say if it's coming down aggressively, at some point it must go back up. Sometimes in stocks it doesn't, it just goes right down to zero. That doesn't happen in property. So it's just a matter of time before something happens and the recovery kicks in. And obviously there's a lot of confidence now, but from our point, we were pushing it. It has only been other investors who have been thinking like us, and we're very vocal about our confidence in the Aberdeen market and its recovery and long term, so we put that on our clients. So when surveyors are seeing comparable sales going through, a lot of it's investor transactions. So they're seeing, you know, flats that were bought for, you know, aggressive prices. However, that's maybe 1 in 7 of the most recent ones, but maybe some of the comparables are like 2 years old. But there hasn't been any more sales in that street since then. So how can you really have a guide for what to value that at? So I do feel for the surveyors a little bit.
It's challenging,
but it feels like they're a little bit cautious on wanting to give that market the confidence again, despite it being their patch. You know, it feels to me that a little bit. So part of the difficulty we had with this portfolio was aligning on survey values, because it, you know, there was, well, we've had 3 different valuations, right, across the time. So that's been a challenge, and certainly on single units I can see it. So they will probably be the last to see the confidence until things start happening. However, in the last quarter we got the ASPC stats. There was 30% more transactions in the last quarter compared to the quarter previous. So if that doesn't tell you that things are starting to move and things are happening, I don't know what else would.
There's also a few big factors that could start to tip things in the favour of Aberdeen. You know, obviously the renewables drive has been a big focus across the UK, especially since Labour came in, and we've been waiting for them to announce GB Energy HQ. Now that's funny, because we never bought the Aberdeen portfolio or looked at it. It was 2 years when we agreed to deal with this thing in mind, the energy hub. I don't even think it was in discussion at that point. It just so happens that our belief in Aberdeen
it's coincided with they've just announced that that's where it's going.
And it's a bigger indication than just, okay, GB Energy HQ. It's an indication that Aberdeen is likely to become a European hub for renewables.
Yeah.
You know, and it makes perfect sense. It always seemed like the logical decision because, you know, there's a wealth of engineering resource, expertise, huge amount of research and development up there. You know, but aside from that, even over the last couple of years, there's been billions of pounds worth of investment in Aberdeen.
Yep.
You know, so when you've got areas like Falkirk that gets absolutely no investment, has no discernible industry moving forward, you know, in fact it's contracting if anything, and its property prices are going up 30-40%, and Aberdeen that's got billions of investment is going down. Where is the logic?
I know, it's funny, like when you compare that, like you're trying to hedge your bets on this, where this HQ is going to go. It was like I did that video of the High Street and all the projects we had in the High Street, and you compare it to that, you know, the other guy that bought Cali Square, like chasing where they're going to put the new town hall to try and capitalise on that. Like and then you compare it to where is the government, what city is the government going to back to be the energy hub in the UK? So, and it happens to plant on the area that we've just bought 100 units. Like you look back at one of my favourite books is The Outliers, and it's about timings. It's like certain people who tried the same thing as what other people who ended up very successful, they tried the same thing, but for whatever reason the timing wasn't right and it never worked. And it just so happened that this other person tried it 10 years later, and for whatever reason it was then the perfect time, and it's all worked out. This might be our opportunity to really have just, by sheer coincidence, it could be our time to massively benefit from it.
I mean, it's a very deliberate move from us. We feel like things are going to be moving in the direction to see significant growth in this portfolio, but hey, let's not forget we bought it at a massive discount. So the downside risk here is pretty low.
That's what made it so beautiful. You know, no matter how many times we look at, so one of the factors we always calculate when we're analysing, we're looking at getting paid in the future, and we want to get paid today, but we have to protect our interest day one, and that's about buying at a discount. I don't really run any calculations on capital growth. I know some people do. Capital growth is one of these things that we know we get over time if we just hold it long enough, but it's not something I bother to really pay much attention to detail on. And with this portfolio, it was a case of we've seen the fundamentals, we're going to take it, but we still had to protect ourselves that even if that doesn't happen, we bought it fucking right.
We're good. We're good. Yeah, so we've got the GB Energy HQ thing, which is a massive announcement, moving things in the right direction. There's also this SSE thing. So, you know, SSE have got a new site up there. That's
right, they're going up to, so it's up in Peterhead, and it was actually, it's funny, I was at a family party and I spoke to a girl who's a project manager, she's a family friend, she's a project manager for SSE, and I said, well, where are you working? And she says, oh, I'm up in Peterhead. And I was like, alright, what are you doing up there? Because she's up there 4 days a week. And she says, well, substations, we've got a power plant up there, that's what we're doing, we're launching a new substation. And just the following week we spoke to a portfolio vendor who we're looking to do an acquisition for up there, and he says that SSE have just bought a farm for £14 million, and the plan is that they're building this substation, and they're looking to recruit on a heavy duty basis in terms of people up there. They can't get stock, so there's going to be an abundance of short-term rental opportunities for, and we just so happen we've got availability.
And we are talking about thousands of additional people going into the
apparently it's going to be national campaigns for recruitment drive, you know, to get people up there, so it's going to be a long-term project, and that is just going to be one thing. The substation's one thing, the wind farms is another thing, all the renewable stuff, you know, the fact that there's this energy HQ thing, you know, there's just a lot now happening, and it's not just in Aberdeen, but that whole East Coast that I mentioned earlier is hopefully going to start to see the benefit of all of it again, where they have suffered probably in the last 10 years.
Yeah, and interestingly, one of our clients asked this week, because they'd seen the Aberdeen HQ announcement, and they asked, oh, does that mean the prices are going to start moving now? I actually don't think it will.
Nah.
And it goes back to the surveyors, right? And this is it. I think the surveyors are now so conservative in Aberdeen that they're going to want to see lots of transactions go through, not only lots of transactions, but lots of transactions in the specific area where your property is before they're going to start attaching higher values to it.
You have to also understand that investor transactions are a small part of majority of the property market. You know, areas like Edinburgh, the reason Edinburgh's prices are so high is not from investment, it's because people need to live there because of work and everything that drives there. People want to live there. Just because there's new energy HQs and there's going to be a lot of people working there doesn't mean they want to buy and pay top price to stay there long term. And that's the difference. You might get investors buying there more because it makes sense from a rental point of view, they can get good returns, but it's somebody who built their whole career on the oil market and they bought a big 6-bed family home for them and their family because they're on the offshore money. They don't see it ever going any other way. Is that going to happen again? Not sure.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of people reluctant to buy in Aberdeen if they have to work up there, because I know loads of guys. You know, when I was working out in Azerbaijan, there was a lot of BP guys there that previously been in Aberdeen. The market was hot at the time. They decided to buy, and then that was 2016. We were in Azerbaijan, and these guys are hemorrhaging money, struggling to sell properties. And
because everybody sees, oh well, fuck it, you know, the price I'm paying in rent, like I'd be better buying. Not always, you know. Like I was saying, my cousin, when he worked up in Peterhead, he rented. He never bought. He was travelling. He just stayed up there during the week and he came back at the weekends. You know, he had his own place because he didn't want to do short term where they might turn around and say they don't have any availability and then he's on to somewhere else and he's chopping and changing all the time. So he got a fixed tenancy, a private tenancy agreement on his own flat at a fixed amount per month rather than a nightly rate. That made sense for him. But it meant that we had a good tenant who was there all week when he was working. He was away at the weekends. You knew he was fixed with his employment and his money was good. You know, from a landlord's point of view, it was ideal. From his point of view, it worked well, but you know, there was no demand to say I want to set up stall and actually buy anything. And I think that will still be the nature of it. I think people are happy to travel now. Look at all the guys who are disappearing over to Saudi and all that. You know, and they're willing to travel 3-4 weeks at a time and then come home. Nobody's talking about I'm going to buy in Saudi because I work over there.
I think a best bet of short-term increases is a higher volume of investors up there seeing the returns, and you know, compared to where the property prices are just now in Aberdeen and the sort of level of rent you can already get, I'm expecting a lot of investors to look at that and say that's a great yield. Moreover, I only think rents are going to start to accelerate in Aberdeen as demand.
I think so. Obviously, you know, the main hubs, a lot of this stuff is subcontracted, so you'll start to get, you know, other European contractors who will probably take corporate leases on properties for their staff. So when they send them over or they send them here to work or whatever, you know, they'll take block of flats or whatever it is on a long-term lease and they'll have a fixed amount to pay. You'll probably get a lot more of that rather than you know, necessarily individuals and stuff like that. So it should be a nice mixed bag in terms of demand, but I do think it's all demand on rental.
So I think it's important to mention that, you know, whilst we've just done this massive portfolio acquisition, you know, there has been, since we bought it in a short period of time we owned it, some big announcements in terms of things that are likely to drive the market forward. Are we sitting here saying, right, slam dunk, we're going to make millions? We're not, because, you know, at the end of the day we expect this to be slower. It's a long-term investment. Property investment always is longer term, but we think we've put ourselves in the best possible place to maximise our
I mean, the timing was just funny, to be fair. We concluded on it on the Monday, should have been the Friday before, and one of the usual reasons, banking was closed or whatever, happened on the Monday, and I think it was the following week they announced this. And it wasn't like a we told you so moment. It was just like, we've been banging on that we thought Aberdeen was going to go in that direction for years. It's just taken so long for us to get this portfolio done, but our mindset's still longer term. It never changed anything because these announcements happen to follow in line with what we've all been saying we thought might happen anyway.
So I'm keen to try and bring this back to fundamentals, because it's easy for us to sit here. You know, we're one of the largest private landlords in Scotland. We're growing quickly. We just added 12 million of asset value to our business. How do we then take this back to individuals looking to start investing in property and, you know, scale their buy-to-let portfolio? Because I guess the first question anybody would ask, whether it's a £12 million portfolio you're buying for 7, or whether it's a $100,000 property that you're buying for 70k, why would they discount, to that level? Why would they sell something for less than it's worth?
It all comes down to circumstances. Always does. If you might be difficult to compare it, given that you're talking about properties, to what I'm about to say. But if you imagine somebody's moving house, and they've got a couch. Right, they've got a couch, they're buying a new one for their new place, they've got this couch, they stick it on Gumtree for 500 quid, they're moving out on the Friday, they put it on the Monday, nobody bites. Tuesday, nobody bites, so they drop it to 400 quid on the Wednesday, then it's 300 quid on the Thursday, and the next point they're actually saying, if you just come and collect it, I'll give you it for free. Time pressure dictates value. So if somebody has a certain product or an asset that for whatever reason they need money quickly, they will take a hit on value in order to get that money faster. So it's personal circumstances. Honestly, every single week we come into a new reason as to why somebody wants to do it. There are patterns, there are trends. I've seen a load of them, but there's always new ones. But the point is, it's circumstantial to the individual that owns it. Recent one that we've just done in an area where property prices have increased by 60% over the last 10 years. They are selling their property at a 30% discount to us, because 10 years ago they paid less than what they're getting today, even at a 30% discount. So psychologically, they're not losing as far as they're concerned. But it's convenient to their circumstance to do it that way than to do it in a traditional way.
Laurie and I had a lot of success at the start of our property journey with inherited properties or elderly people looking to kind of downsize, because the perception of the value of the properties was pretty low, and there was a huge amount of people that bought their properties, especially these ex-local authority cottage flats, on the government the buyback scheme, and it was like $8,000 they paid for the property, and then all of a sudden, fast forward, someone's offering you $40,000 for it. Even if it's worth 60, they're quite happy. I remember the Sunnyside one that Laurie done. I think it was the first one, and he said the woman turned around and he was like, so what do you need? And she went, can you do 22? And it was like a request, and this thing was worth like $60,000. Well, we still own that property. It's worth 80 now. 80,
like at that time, it's just like, and she's like, can you do 22? Because in her head, I paid 8 for this. So 22 sounds like a big stretch. And he was like, I think I can get there.
I'll be back with the paperwork in a second.
And it just shows, like, it's circumstantial, and the point is they were delighted that Laurie could do that, and I know he's paid for the removal costs and all that, and fully helped them. They weren't concerned about what you were going to go and do with the property after that. And that's the thing is, most times we're solving a problem for them. And with this vendor, we were solving a problem because he had a large volume of assets that he wanted to offset. He's past retirement age. He had mortgages outstanding on a good portion of the portfolio.
So this is the Aberdeen 100, right?
The Aberdeen 100 again, sorry, yeah. And very similar to the circumstances of somebody with a single unit. He had his reasons as to why he had to do it this way. It's not something that's easy to, there's no queue of people who are able to buy 100 properties in one go.
It's a really important point on portfolios. And I've said this in a lot of our training. We have had a huge amount of our clients in the last 12 months doing portfolio deals. I've lost track of how many portfolio deals we've done this year with clients, but it's 20 plus. There's a lot, and that ranges from 6-unit portfolios to 16-unit portfolios. We're doing portfolios regularly with our clients, but the reality is there is a very limited pool of people that are in a position to be able to manage the finance and coordinate it in a reasonable time frame and understand how to get through the portfolio acquisition process, because they're much more complicated than a single unit deal. And then every time the value of these portfolios get higher, it becomes a smaller and smaller pool of people that can actually do it.
Correct.
And more honestly, you're buying from an investor. Investors always expect a discount.
It's a very different conversation. However, it can still be difficult for an investor to understand, to accept it, because they bought with the view that I'm going to make money on this, and then it comes to offloading, but the way they want to offload it means that they can only sell to another investor, and they don't want to pay top price. So it can be a bit of a roadblock at times, but eventually you find a common ground because you both recognise that you're the same type of person.
Yeah.
You know, you've done it for the same reasons, it's just a different time. Whereas with a homeowner, where it's like they've lived in it, they're much more precious about it, and it can be a harder conversation then to get them to understand it from our point of view.
You don't have, you know, really any emotional connection to your properties if you're doing property investment right. You know, I don't think Laurie's been there more than a handful of our 300 properties.
No. I'll talk about addresses. I'll know the addresses more than you guys, because most of them we brought in.
And because I was managing refurbs and stuff like that for a while, I've been to more of them than he has. But, you know, you're not going to them because most of the time it's numbers on a spreadsheet. It's financial performance. It's, you know,
it's like this. Say I'll say an address and Laurie, but I don't know, is that one we own? Like, he doesn't actually know. Because it's numbers on a spreadsheet. That's and it can be quite detached from that. I was talking about this with a client yesterday with regards to the properties that we flip. You know, it's not the same experience, and you know, there is an enjoyment in, you know, renovating homes and bringing a nice product to the market for somebody to live in. So just because we're at the scale we're at, we're a you know, we've got a group of businesses, we've got loads going on. Not everybody has to be at that scale to get the benefit of investing in property. No. You know, people can buy a unit at a time. Genuinely, anybody with simple, kind of very basic knowledge should be able to buy 2 properties a year. Genuinely, you know, it's with a little bit of focus, basic kind of strategy. 2 a year is doable for most.
Absolutely.
You know, so it doesn't have to be buying 100. That's the route we've decided to go down. You know, our ambitions, and that's what one of the questions we always get asked is, these deals you're sending, you know, selling to other clients or opportunities you're bringing, it's just because you just don't want them. It's not. It's when there is opportunity out there for larger deals, and you know, that line of people who are able to get that deal done. Right now, we're probably number 1 on that list for anybody offloading a substantial portfolio, and especially when most people know about this acquisition, because we were agreeing, you know, looking at another portfolio of substantial size, and the first thing he asked was a reference from our solicitor to say, are we legit, can we do this? And she came back straight away and went, here's everything these guys have done. It was accepted there, right there and then, as soon as he's seen it, because there's nobody else who has that CV other than us right now. And that's not banging the chest and boasting, it's legit. And that's one of the things that probably makes us stand out, is the mindset in a portfolio gets fucking battered constantly. And on this one, it was 2 years of challenges with the portfolio fell apart. We paid 30 grand in surveys, thought it was never coming back on, renegotiated again maybe 6 months later. Like, it's crazy the journey that we went on with this one.
And even from the decision point of, right, everything's agreed, we're moving forward, push the button on finance, and second round of surveys, etc. That was that December or January of this year?
So it was September last year when the deal came back around, and we said we'll conclude on it in January. That's what that was what we said.
And we're now in September.
And we just concluded on it.
I mean, these deals are very complicated portfolio
3
deals.
rounds of surveys we've ended up paying.
Portfolio deals, you have to think about title splits. You know, if you've got blocks of properties all in one title, lenders don't like that, so you want to split it. You can only do that at acquisition or sale. You've got a huge amount of due I get this gets me every time. Due diligence on all of the tenancy agreements, compliance documents, you know, rents, arrears. There's just a huge amount to go through and get into, all those titles to review. If the titles are getting split, you know, you basically need to do surveys to understand how each flat is comprised and what share of the communal and what share of the roof and blah blah blah. It's an extremely complex process, and people always underestimate it. We found that with our clients as well. All the portfolios we've done, albeit they're generally much smaller portfolios, kind of 6 to 12 units. You know, it's a massive learning curve for every single client that's done one, and it's why we only do it with our top level consultancy clients,
100%.
because it's just so much work, and throughout the entire process it's guaranteed at some stage someone's pulling out, and the deal has to be salvaged
multiple times. You know, I get threatened with it on every transaction from both sides all the time. because your mindset is challenged every single day, you know, and you feel that you've hit breaking point, and that's where success comes from, you know. For me, is when you think, fuck this, I'm done, I can't go any further, and then you keep going anyway. That's where you get the results from it, and it's not easy, and that's been our biggest learning curve over the last 12 months since we launched our consultancy product. Is, you know, we need to really condition other people, because the three of us have found a way to make it happen because we have each other to do that. But if you're just yourself, it can be, you know, you're not getting through it.
We are a lot more selective about the people that we let into consultancy just now, because it is not enough for us to find the portfolio deal for you, take you through the numbers, help you get the finance, manage you through the process. If you don't have the mindset to deal with the ups and downs of a portfolio acquisition, you're not going to get it done.
Yeah.
And the guys that don't have the mindset can end up losing a huge amount of money through that process. You know, you're committing in the front end to surveys, you're committing in the front end to legals. You know, there can be a lot of costs, and if you're going to pull the plug at some point during the line, it's a big liability.
100%, and that's one of the biggest challenges, is when some of the clients are saying to us when they're looking at these portfolios, like, why are they selling it for that value? Then you go through all the details as to why we're getting this distressed sale at that price, and it's like, how did they buy so many properties and they never knew what they were doing? Like, they don't know how this is all happening. And it's like, because it was easier to borrow money and to buy things back in 2007, for example, and they just, you know, it was a blank checkbook, and they just kept buying. Doesn't mean they knew what they were doing. And I said this to Ryan, actually, that because I was speaking to a potential new client who meets all the requirements from a cash point of view, and he was saying, I don't really have experience. And I said, well, we usually look to plan and work with clients for like 2 to 3 years. I said, and it's not so much about the education. I said, but we have to get you to understand how all of this works, because at some point we want you to not need us. And when you don't need us, what we don't want is for you to be one of those portfolio landlords who have made a mess of your portfolio, and you're coming back to us to buy it or to fix it. You know, because that's what these landlords have done, is they've accumulated with no professional strategy, no management structure, no systemization, no clue about finance.
It's actually so easy to do now because the legislation is so complex. You know, the tax system has changed so massively in the last 5 or 6 years. The Scottish government's been hammering landlords for quite some time now, but if you know how to navigate it all, again, like anything, it's an opportunity, because if everybody's scared of the market, then you've got an opportunity to make some really good money.
We've spoken about this on other podcasts, and I've always said it, because everyone bashed the SNP government about what they're doing to landlords, and my view was always, they're not trying to bash landlords, they just want professional landlords. That's what they want. They want outfits that know how to do it properly, not people who just bought on a second property just for the sake of making a bit of extra income. They don't want that. They want somebody who's full outfit, you know, they've got less landlords, but it means then that they know who they're dealing with. And that's, you know, when you've got the scale of what we've got, you have influence, and people will ask you, you know, I mentioned about back in when we were looking at the Hoyk one, and it was about the old mill, and it was Chamber of Commerce came to us and said, there's 300 people with jobs in there that are all retiring, would they need to recruit, but there's not enough accommodation, can you guys buy properties in there to provide accommodation? So it's like they're coming to us for the solution. Other ones, like when we bought Inverkip, it was a housing association that had those flats. They never had the budget or the money to take care of them. They needed someone like us to come in, to buy them off them, to make them liquid, to give them cash, and then serve the audience that they were trying to serve in the first place, which is the people of Scotland.
Unfortunately, the other big deal we were trying to do in Greenock with the housing association, they didn't take our offer, they didn't move forward, and now those properties have been demolished, I think, right?
Being demolished, that one still hurts, and I reached out to them again to say, like, this is what we tried to do. That's going on 3 years ago, I think. And we had a deal. They had a net negative value of 200 grand against this site. It was at 48 flats, all boarded up, abandoned, no use to them. 200 grand was the quote to demolish them. We made a proposal to take on the flats where the conditions where you couldn't sell them. We had no intention of selling them. We wanted to repurpose them and give them back to accommodation, because that's what they need. And they knocked us back. They accepted an offer from somebody else. Nearly 3 years later, nothing happened, and they're back to demolition, and they're going ahead, just seen the planning approved to knock them down.
Jeez.
Just mental, you know.
It's such a waste because, you know, I mean, these buildings aren't even that old.
No, but the problem with that setup, when you go and pull the board of directors or you go look at Companies House, there's about 40 people on that board, and they change hands every couple of months. Nobody's making any fucking decisions up there.
No.
You know, it's a shambles. And people are banging on about the lack of housing. It's like, we have housing. We just don't have the right people in control of it.
Absolutely. That's that sort of stuff is heartbreaking when you look at the amount of housing deficit we have.
And the thing is that people can sometimes frown upon like outfits like us, and you know, commonly we get called parasites, because yes, we are building wealth for ourselves and our kids and our family long term. You know, generational wealth was the plan, but we're fixing a problem. You know, so likewise with these people who need to sell quickly, they can go to an estate agent, they can go and do that service if they want, but they know it doesn't fix their problem. We can. So I don't know how you can be bad by helping somebody. And we're helping people right now, as well as helping ourselves and our family long term. You know, I don't see where the negative is in any of that. So for anybody being a private landlord, getting heat from people who don't understand it, block that shit out, because I just don't see how it makes sense.
No, we see the value that we bring, and you know, at the end of the day, building wealth comes from creation of value, and that's what we're doing. I think the big thing for me about this Aberdeen 100, and over the course of the next month or so, we are going to be doing a lot of features on the portfolio, the stock. You know, so keep an eye out on our YouTube for that. You know, once Laurie's back in action,
once Laurie's back, we'll take a chance to do some more technical breakdown on it, because there's a load of complexities to this portfolio, because it's mixture with commercial and different funding, how we looked at funding it the first time, how we done it when we actually done it. You know, there was loads of moving parts. So for those that are interested in the high level, you know, proper detail, we will get an opportunity to talk through that.
And I think that's the important part of this 100 units is everything we have learned over the last 6 years, even longer for you in the below market space, but you know, 6 years in property investment for us, everything we've learned, all the deals we've done, all the portfolios we've done, all the smaller stuff we've done, we have put all of that knowledge into this
transaction.
Literally every element of it. This is a culmination of everything we've learned, and everything we teach, you know, has gone into that deal, from understanding the corporate structure, how to put it through a trust to avoid the inheritance tax. We've done all of that in this portfolio. The finance, how to structure it, how to bring in, you know, the money that you need to get the deal done, how to make sure the titles are split, how to line up your exit strategy. You know, there is so much complexity to a deal like this, but ultimately, you know, we have built up over the last 5 or 6 years to get us to a point where we're in a position to do this deal, and there's no reason why other people can't get to this scale. We're seeing our clients do gradually bigger deals, starting at 6 units, going to 12. You know, we're seeing them move forward and learn the fundamentals of how this works. But you know,
it all starts from one deal. That's it. We were the same. You do your first deal, fuck, that went well. Do it again. All of a sudden you'd get a bit more confidence. You know, we had Scott, one of our clients, in, who just concluded on 6 units in the West End of Glasgow, which is a deal we sourced. We put it together for him. We supported him on financing it. It wasn't easy, you know, 9 months to get that deal concluded. And yesterday he said to us, he was like, I now get it. Like, I have much more confidence going to the next one. I won't be, you know, the same person on the next transaction. And that was the same with us. You know, you learn from every single one that you do.
Anytime anybody talks about something like that in a portfolio, they'll immediately go to Laurie with the Douglas portfolio, where he was ready to tell the guy to ram himself and fuck right off over a $3,000 extra bill at the end that the guy wanted us to pay. And it's like, well, we're like 20-30 grand deep into this deal, let's just get the fucking deal done.
And it was like, even on that portfolio, you know, it's kind of the beauty of the whole thing is that happened. He wanted to walk away, fucked us for an extra $3,000 at the end. you were the sensible one, and you made the right choice and the logical decision.
But by the way, it was easy for me to do that because I hadn't been dealing with the guy what he had. So the guy had just pushed him to his limits. That's
where the perspective comes in and the benefit of the setup that we have. So that happened. We then massively had to overspend on the refurb on that portfolio. So it was looking like a shit show, and then we got massive up valuation on the portfolio as well. So it ended up better than we ever planned out to be. The difference was we got in and we done it. And that was just like our client yesterday talking about a recent flip that he'd done. He wanted it for 80, he ended up having to pay 86.5. It got down valued to 100. He went, no, I'm going to sell it now. Spoke to the surveyor, got a home report 115, 15 grand higher than what a surveyor had valued it for remortgage, and then he sold it for 125. 10 grand over home report.
Great result.
It looked like this is shit, this is went all wrong, and ended up better than he ever planned it to be.
But the difference is when we see people come into this game at the start, they're very reactive to those points in time. You know, if you had sourced that deal for someone early in their journey and then they've just got the down value 100k, that is it. This shit doesn't work. It's an absolute joke. You know, we had a similar situation with first deal for one of our other clients in Lark Hall where
that's right. It was valued at 90. They bought it for 60 grand. I think they spent about 12 on it. Went for reval and revalued at 90 again. I expected 110 and it got 90. So they're going, what the fuck, this doesn't work. And it was toys at the pram shit, you know. It was like that we've been shafted here, was the deal even worth that? And you can't help, no matter how long I've been doing it, you can't help but be tested and go, did I get that right? Am I wrong in this scenario? What did I miss? And you go back over it, and you know, 9 times out of 10 I just go, nah, I know this shit now. I don't. This happens. They sat on it for 6 months, and what happened?
120k value.
120k value. 10 grand more than I even valued it in the first place.
And 30 grand from the previous valuation. It's just the game, but you need to learn to detach from the emotions. It's really hard.
Fucking really hard. And even if you tell people like to expect this, when it happens, they just still freak out. You know, and that is generally the hardest part, is to control it. And it's not easy. You know, when people talk about passive income, yes it is. I mean, literally we've got it for the first time where the rent's coming in daily, the rent statements on this Aberdeen portfolio, and it's quality. You're just seeing money coming in every single day, rather than just the big lump sums at the start of the month. So it is passive. Like, we're not doing anything currently for that, but we had to work for 2 fucking years to get that deal done. So there's a process to get to the passive income part of it, and that's the bit that people need to be willing to exchange.
And we still have our own kind of rough rides with this stuff. You know, we had quite a lot of surveys done last year where, like, you know, for example, we had GNS that surveyed some of our stock in 2022, so we instructed them to do the 2024 valuations, just expecting pretty much the same. The market's not moved. They massively downvalued it because it was a different surveyor, new guy. You know, just like way off the mark with what these properties are worth. Just you know, this is the game. You know, it just takes one surveyor who's pretty new around the block, doesn't give a fuck, trying to make a name for himself, and then, you know, really shafts us.
Or just they're so paranoid that they get it wrong that they're cautious. And it's like, but that's not a fair representation of the value of the asset, and that's why it's like everything, it's human beings, it's individuals, so you're up against that, and you can't control every element. And if you think you can, just forget it, because you won't be built for it.
We could go down this road all day, but I think we'll wind things up there. Just to summarise, massive announcement for us today: Aberdeen 100 units. Deal we've been working on for 2 years, 12 mil asset val, 60 odd grand the rent, which we expect to increase.
It would be interesting, actually. I was thinking about this last night because our funder to gather money on the project, it would have been their biggest deal in Scotland in terms of value. It's overshadowed by a big student accommodation deal that they done just last year, but it would have been the biggest prior to that, so it's the second biggest. But in terms of volume of units, I would be really interested to see what other single transaction of residential properties in Scotland is bigger than that, because I don't know of a single entity that's bought that many in one deal. I don't know how we could find that out,
No,
but it would be really cool to see it.
It'd be great to be able to understand this and see it, but yeah, it is where we are, and we're not done. You know, that's the important thing to mention. We're still even heavily focused in Aberdeen. There's a lot of deals that we've got in negotiations. We're probably looking at about another 110 units in total across a couple of portfolios that we're in negotiations on.
Yeah, it's business as usual. Plan is refinance this, get it performing better, on to the next one. You know, as sad as that sounds, given it's such a monumental deal, that's the nature of what we do.
Yeah, and the journey's never done with any deal. You know, it's like getting over the line. It's just really the first step.
Starting it, the hard work begins
2
now.
year step, but it's the first one. Now we need to get the refinances done. We need to get the rents up. We need to make sure we're maximising the investment.
Yeah,
and keep on top of it in the longer term. You know.
100%, man. That's, you know, if you look at mergers and acquisitions in the corporate world of businesses, you know, those transactions can go on for years, and all the due diligence, you know, like way longer than this is done. So the complexity's there. But then once a company takes over, they need to implement all their systems to turn it around, and to get it performing the way they want to do it. It's no different here. It's assets. It's maybe slightly different. People see property, but it's the same game. You know, we've got work to do.
Awesome. So thanks for that massively exciting announcement for us. There's going to be a lot more on our social media about it, so stay tuned for that. And as Conar said, we'll delve into a bit more detail when Laurie's back, and we can talk about some of the nuts and bolts of this deal.
Yep.
All right. That has been the Real Wealth Podcast for this week. I'm Alex Robertson, and thanks for joining us on this wealth journey.